The world around us is full of amazing buildings that make you marvel at the genius in their construction. Then there's the buildings where architects really gave it their best go. Now, Papa Be Amazed loves a trier, so I've rounded up some of the biggest, most expensive, and downright most outrageous almost buildings that never quite made it over the finish line. Put your hard hat on. Oh, and watch out for falling roof tiles. Some of these places are a state. Let's take a look at the biggest mega projects that have never been finished. Shark in the water. Some of y'all gave me a serious stick in the old Megaprojects video for not calling soccer football. Look, I get it. America's football is less football and more hand-egg. But when Qatar was selected to host the 2022 Kicky Pig Bladder World Cup, there were big questions regarding whether the country's infrastructure could support a premier sporting tournament. So Qatar embarked on an outrageous construction campaign, and one of those projects was the Doha Shark Crossing. This was an insanely ambitious 3-bridge system linked by 2 underwater tunnels spanning a whopping 7.5 miles across Doha Bay. This big boy should have handled an incredible 6,000 vehicles an hour and significantly reduced traffic in the surrounding areas. Now, big builds like this don't come cheap, and the Qatari government set aside a whopping $12 billion just for this one project. Construction was scheduled to begin in 2015, and everyone hoped it would be open for the World Cup. But 2022 came and went already, and I don't see no bridge. See, despite Qatar consistently denying there was a problem, low oil prices in the years prior to 2022 had put a major strain on their economy. More than 15% of their annual income is oil, and without that money, some of these massive projects had to be put on hold. However, just because the bridge isn't there now doesn't mean it won't ever be there. The Qatari government announced in the 2020 budget that they were relaunching the project and expecting to complete it by 2024. Whether that's true or not remains to be seen. Me, I'm not sure. But hey, if I'm being a negative Nelly, then I'll be seeing some of y'all in 2024 for the roasting of a lifetime. Centenary Cathedral. Okay, no video about unfinished buildings would be ironically complete without arguably the most famous unfinished building in the world. Wanna guess where it is? If you said the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, have a congratulatory siesta after watching this video. Comprende? Despite construction starting way back in 1882, the imposing neo-Gothic Catholic Church is, as of making this video, still being built. Yikes. See, the project was started over 140 years ago by Francisco de Paula del Villar, but he resigned just a year later. Then it was taken over by renowned architect Antoni Gaudi. Now, Gaudi poured every waking second into the project, but in 1926 he came second in a one-on-one fight with a tram and was buried in the Sagrada Familia's crypt. Damn. At the time, less than a quarter of the grand structure had been finished. The years following Gaudi's passing were somewhat stop-start. The project was relying entirely on private donations, so the money to make any meaningful progress was hard to come by. Then, Spain was devastated by the outbreak of civil war in 1936. In June of that year, anarchists set fire to the crypt and destroyed the workshop as well as the original plans. Man. Luckily, the plans were redeveloped from what scraps survived and work started again in 1939 when the war ended. Progress remained slow though until recent years, where advancements in computer technologies like 3D printing have rapidly accelerated procedures. That finally brings us up to today where, drumroll please, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to announce in a world exclusive declaration, the Sagrada Familia is finally still not done. Wah, wah. But it is nearly there. Current estimates expect it to be completed sometime after 2026, a whopping 100 years after Gaudi's death. Phew, what a ride. Okay, let's talk money. It's impossible to accurately know how much construction and maintenance has cost over the years, but current values put it at around 25 million euros a year. That's just over $27 million. Wowzers. If, and it's a very big if, those costs were consistent for the 141 years since work started, we're talking a little short of a staggering $4 billion. To be clear, this is by no means accurate, but it's the best I've got with the information available. My grade 4 teacher always said math was never my strong point. Do you know what I am good at, though? Being the coolest guy in town. Oh, and making mind-blowing YouTube content. Don't believe me? Well, click those like and subscribe buttons and see for yourself. Go on, I dare ya. Okay, let's get back to the video. The Cursed Temple. Just like Gaudi, many ambitious architects never get to see the finished fruits of their labor. One of those was King Badawpaya, 6th king of Myanmar's Kanbaung dynasty, which ruled the country from 1752 to 1885. But Badawpaya's architectural dreams didn't go wrong for quite the same reasons as Gaudi's. He'd been gifted a sacred Buddhist tooth relic from a visiting Chinese delegation. So to enshrine such a precious artifact, Badawpaya set about building the largest pagoda in the country and possibly even the world. Known as the Mingun Patadorgi, work began on the Grand Temple in 1790, 6 miles northwest of the city of Mandalay. It quickly became the most important thing in King Bad's life. So important that he left running the state to his son and built a new house for himself near the construction site so he could oversee the project. After 7 years, the majestic temple was an almighty 164 feet tall. But construction had taken a huge toll on the population, and rumors of a strange prophecy began to spread among the workers. Supposedly, the temple was cursed, and upon its completion, the kingdom would cease to exist. And no kingdom means no king. This got the better of King Bad's superstitious nature, and any further work on the temple was stopped. At just a third of its desired height, the Patadorgi is still an impressive structure. But compared to what it could have been, I guess we'll never know. As for the curse, maybe it was true. Maybe it was a lie created by an overstretched workforce. It's forever a mystery we won't get an answer to. Amusement Park. There's no rush in life like going to an amusement park. The thrill of the rides, the smell of freshly grilled hot dogs. Ain't nothing better. But the Wonderland amusement park on the outskirts of Beijing was a real roller coaster for all the wrong reasons. The 120-acre theme park in Xinjiang village had hoped to draw in crowds of 20 million people. So you'd think a place with high aspirations would look the part, right? Take a look for yourself. Youch. Construction started in the mid-1990s but was suddenly halted in 1998 and the site left abandoned. Rumors spread thick and fast as to why work dried up, from the discovery of mass graves to even suspected hauntings. Ugh. Who'd want to ride Splash Mountain next to a ghost? Not me. But the real reason is honestly a lot more boring. They simply ran out of money. If you're thinking this looks like a bootleg Disney World, you'd be right. The developers pretty much copied the designs, figuring Disney wouldn't be able to protest against usage of their copyright in China. How wrong they were. I couldn't find any concrete legal cases, but considering Disney signed contracts for their own theme park in Hong Kong in 1999, I'd imagine they had something to say. Maybe that's what caused the money to dry up. After construction plans collapsed, farmers who'd been kicked off their land came back and carried on like nothing had changed. Well, nothing except there was now a big unfinished castle nestled among their carrots. That is, until 2013 when the final remaining structures were pulled down. I guess Wonderland became more of an I Wonderland. Zing! In terms of how much money was sunk into this waste of concrete, it's hard to say. But the initial costs for Disney World's Magic Kingdom, which is slightly smaller at 107 acres, are rumored to be an astounding $331 million. Just like the Sagrada Familia, there's a lot of variables at play, but as a ballpark, it shows what a money hole this development could have been. Stagnant shopping. Anytime I go shopping, I end up buying more stuff than I mean to. Maybe I should try my hand at the South China Mall. Plans for the colossal 7.1 million square foot mega mall in Dongguan started in 2002 and included a roller coaster, Egyptian Sphinx, and even a 1.3-mile gondola ride through the mall. Oh baby, this place sounds awesome. Yeah, well, despite opening in 2005 with room for 2,350 stores, this place is a ghost mall. Yeesh. See, despite splashing a stonking 2.5 billion yuan, or $402 million on the development, authorities struggled to seal lease agreements with vendors. Secondly, South China Mall was built on old abandoned farmland, so the road infrastructure around it isn't sufficient to supply the traffic a mall this size requires. There's no trains and no direct buses. The inefficient bus service that does operate from Dongguan takes a whole 2.5 hours to travel a measly 6 miles. Cripes. Basically, you need your own transport, something many people in the area don't have. However, not all hope is lost. By 2012, a monstrous 47 lots were filled. Woohoo! Let's have a party. By 2015, this number had gone up again, but large parts of the mall remained vacant. And by 2018, despite gradual improvements, 4 whole stories were still empty. The gondola river was green and stagnant, and the only signs of life were the people hired to stop pedestrians from walking into the abandoned areas. Sheesh. Even so, when I went, I managed to come back with 4 hamsters and Season 8 of Grey's Anatomy on DVD. Why am I like this? Money mishap. Money, 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 money. Some say it makes the world go round, but in other cases it doesn't move things along quite fast enough. The latter is definitely true for Ujjayapu Financial District. Yep, to the surprise of absolutely no one, we're still on a China groove. But they're just so good at being bad at building stuff, and Ujjayapu is no exception. The area in Tianjin was set up to be the city's center for finance and world trade, and a new world money capital doesn't come cheap. Ujjayapu received a staggering $30 billion of investment and was expected to open in June 2014. But surprise, surprise, it didn't work out. It's not so cleverly built on land just a few inches above sea level and is very prone to floods. So after heavy rainfall, people literally had to take off their shoes and roll their pants up just across the street. Also, the company in charge of building, I say again, the world's new finance center, struggled managing their budget. Somehow they blew through a mind-boggling $50 billion budget and ended up in crippling debt. Shockingly though, this one might not be all doom and gloom. Work on Ujjayapu had been slow since 2016, but by 2019, some government agencies of Tianjin had actually set up new headquarters there. What do you think? Could this faint glimmer of hope actually live up to its hefty expectations? Let me know in the comments. Slumbering skyscraper. As it goes, the irony of failed financial centers isn't just a China issue. Over in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas, the Centro Financiero con Finanzas aimed for the moon and missed spectacularly. In 1990, work started on a flashy new financial building for Venezuelan stockbrokers and bankers, and at 561 feet tall, it's currently the 3rd tallest building in Venezuela. However, in 1994, the Venezuelan government took control of the banks and absolutely tanked the economy. Work on the tower stopped when the money dried up, so the government took control over that too, and for years it sat as this unfinished blight overlooking the impoverished city. Then in the 2000s, Caracas suffered another massive blow, this time due to a severe lack of housing. This led to swaths of squatters overtaking the abandoned offices in 2007 and kitting them out with basic utilities. In the years that followed, the squat filled with ramshackle barbershops, bodegas, beauty salons, and even a backstreet dentist. By 2011, over 700 families were taking refuge in the tower. The financial center had become the world's tallest slum. How ironic. Outside sources slammed the slum as a hotbed for crime and illicit goods, but Those inside called it a kind of communal utopia. Sadly for them, the dream was short-lived. By 2014, the government evacuated hundreds of families and relocated them into new homes just south of Caracas. By June the following year, everyone had been removed and the Centro Financiero Confianzas lay empty once again. There were rumors that Chinese banks were interested in renovating it for its original use, however, they never materialized. While Venezuela is still plodding its way through economic woes, it's hard to see that changing. Swindler's Shipyard. San Francisco. What a place. Named, of course, after St. Francis, patron saint of Pilates instructors and $20 juices. I'm kidding. But for all the oat lattes and jiu-jitsu gyms the Bay is known for, it's not all roses. Take Hunters Point. It was projected to be a swanky new neighborhood replacing the old naval shipyard, with development cost estimated at around $8 billion. Sheesh. That included stores, restaurants, bars, public spaces, and beautiful, affordable homes for all the tech bros and broettes. When I say affordable, it's still $1 million for a 2-bed condo. Come on, it's San Francisco. Compared to the average cost in the area of $1.4 million, these are affordable. Or at least they would have been had everything gone to plan. However, everything has not gone to plan. See, between 1945 and 1969, the shipyard was the largest nuclear test facility in the U.S. Because of this, the area is still a hotbed for extremely hazardous radioactive substances. That's why the houses were so cheap. Before any building work started, cleanup company Tetra Tech were tasked with removing the nasty chemicals, so, the Bay Area wasn't overrun with brain-dead radioactive zombies. But they've been accused of faking up to 97% of the data submitted as proof the area was safe. Now, this is no joke. People have lost partners, children have been endangered, and some have even contracted diseases doctors can't diagnose. In the face of all this, Tetra Tech is looking at a jaw-dropping $27 billion lawsuit for damages. Holy smokes. In the meantime, any further work to Hunters Point has been banned until the concerns over its safety can be nullified. How long that might take? Who knows? Boy, what a mess. Bridge to Nowhere. My mom always used to sing me the nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down. Kinda harsh. Last I checked, it was still there. But there's one London bridge that's definitely not going anywhere. The Thames Garden Bridge. And that's because construction literally didn't go anywhere. See, planning permission was granted in 2014 for a new snazzy pedestrian crossing over the River Thames between the pre-existing Waterloo Bridge and Blackfriars Bridge. The bridge concepts show a beautiful nature-oriented design full of lush greenery. Pretty cool, right? However, by 2016, the Mayor of London ordered a review of the project to see if it was still proving good value for money. Suddenly, the company in charge of orchestrating construction, the Garden Bridge Trust, showed a shortfall of $71 million in their company accounts. What? Yep, see, even before a single brick had been laid, dicey dealers dished out $27 million in construction contracts, $12 million on designers, nearly $3 million on legal costs, and over $2 million paying themselves for doing such a wonderful job. Gross. And that's not counting the $530,000 they spent on a fundraising gala, which is posh talk for a rich douchebag party. But the real injustice here is that $56 million of all that was money taken from British taxpayers. Crooks. Even though the project was abandoned without any meaningful work happening, some people made a lot of money for doing nothing. And that's horrible. I sincerely hope karma buckles any bridge their rich plump asses go across. People like that are the worst. Hopeless Hotel. I'm a sucker for a fancy hotel. Between me and you, I always book a twin room. That way I get one chocolate on each pillow. Work smarter, not harder. But there's one hotel I'm yet to stay at. Funnily enough, so is everyone else. That's because despite costing an estimated $750 million, North Korea's Rugyong Hotel has never had a single guest. Huh? That's right. The 1,080 feet tall, 105-story giant pyramid situated in the North Korean capital has never even opened. While the first bricks were laid way back in 1987 and it reached its full height just 5 years later in 1992, very little progress has been made ever since. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in December 1991, North Korea's economy tanked hard. Without the support of one of their closest allies, they no longer had the money to finance such a wildly costly and ambitious development. But that's not to say they haven't tried. A grand opening was planned in 2012 to coincide with the centenary of founding father Kim Il-sung's birthday. Only it never happened. Neither did the soft launch planned a year later. The Ryugyong Hotel became such an embarrassment for North Korea, they even tried manipulating photographs of the skyline to deny it existed. The problem is, it is the skyline. Fast forward to 2018 and large LED display screens were fitted to one side which show short animations and clips from movies. Ouch. The grandest construction project in the country's history has become little more than a colossal propaganda notice board. Talking about living up to the stereotypes. Burgeoning bankruptcy. One day I want to live in a giant castle. That way when I wake up I can laugh at all my broke neighbors. Good morning, peasants! But recently I saw a castle which made me nearly spit out my morning coffee. Or should I say, lots of castles. This is Burj Al Babas, and before you try adjusting the settings on whatever device you're watching this on, no, your eyes aren't deceiving you. Burj Al Babas was meant to be a magical residential complex of 732 near-identical miniature chateaus near Murdurnu, Turkey. If you're not worried about making your friends feel cripplingly insecure, these deluxe pads were expected to retail between $370,000 and $530,000 a pop. Not bad, especially when you consider each had underfloor heating, jacuzzis, and all sorts of other luxury facilities. But shortly after construction began in 2014, Turkey's economy became highly unstable. By 2019, the developers filed for bankruptcy with debts of $25 million. Oof. In total, only 587 of the 732 homes were built, none of which were ever finished. That alone cost an insane $200 million. Oh, I feel woozy. Now this fairy tale kingdom sits abandoned without a single resident. But nothing's stopping somebody else from finishing it off. Actually, there might be one little reason. Give me a U. Give me a G. Give me an L. Give me a Y. What have we got? Yep, this thing is ugly. I wouldn't want to live there, would you? Let me know down in the comments. Tower of Treachery. Look, you've probably figured out by now there are thousands of reasons why a building might be unfinished, but Sathorn Unique Tower in Bangkok, Thailand might be the most bonkers reason yet. The 47-story luxury high-rise condominium project started in the 1990s and suffered a knockback in 1997 due to the Asian financial crisis. But that's not the weird thing. The building's designer, renowned architect Rangsang Torsuwan, was arrested in 1993 for plotting a high-profile, how do I put it? Kicking of the bucket? What? It was alleged Torsuwan had beef with the president of the Supreme Court, Praman Chansu. So he tried to end the dispute in the most final way possible. Rangsang was sent to prison in 2008 but was acquitted just 2 years later in 2010. Weird. Even though he was found not guilty, Rangsang struggled to secure any more funding for his project. Instead, this 1.8 billion Thai baht, or $52 million development, sits there completely desolate. Or does it? See, urbex enthusiasts often venture into the ghostly tower to have a snoop around, and they've reported some very unusual sightings. Rumor has it there's some otherworldly activities going on around the 43rd floor. Since 2014, travelers claim to have seen the ghostly apparition of a lost backpacker roaming the halls, and sure enough, police reports around that same time state a body was mysteriously found in one of the rooms. Maybe they were a rogue explorer who slipped through an unfinished floor, or perhaps it was something much more sinister. My suggestion? Keep away from the place. You know that old saying, there's no smoke without fire? This place is a red flag inferno. The future is now. Do you ever dream about what houses of the future will be like? I do. I pull into the garage with my flying car, walk through the door and my hot robot wife's ordered Little Caesars. Sounds glorious, right? Well, we never know what the future might hold. At least that's what the developers of the Xanadu houses discovered. The what now? Bear with me. Back in the 1980s, a series of experimental homes popped up in the U.S. showcasing the possibilities of future living. Across the 3 homes in Florida, Wisconsin, and Tennessee, Xanadu presented an idealized future of home design. Concrete? Please, that's so last decade. Each Xanadu house was built by inflating a large balloon and spraying it with special polyurethane insulation foam. Not only was this much cheaper than concrete, but it was quicker too, and it gave Xanadu this weird futuristic appearance. But just like a Little Caesars takeout box, the magic is inside. Xanadu had everything your dream house could. A spa, party room with video projectors, and a state-of-the-art kitchen with an electronic chef which automatically planned ahead nutritious, well-balanced meals. Every single room was fully automated and controlled by microcomputers. Awesome! So hold up, where's my auto chef preparing my delicious, nutritious meals? Well, again, like my Little Caesars, the interior marvels turned out to quickly go old and stale. See, all the computer equipment that formed the basis of Xanadu's futuristic claims was actually old tech from the 1950s. Just 10 years after the first house was built, it had become irrelevant. By 2005, the last house had been demolished, and that's kind of why Xanadu's futuristic ideals never materialized. It was pretty much dead before it hit the ground running. So no, hot robot wife, why must you be so cruel, world? Heartbreak home. For many of us, home is a place we share with our loved ones, somewhere to create cherished memories. Luckily, that's because most of us are more fortunate than American businessman George Bolt. He'd made his millions in the hotel industry throughout the 19th century, but when it came to his own home, George wanted to pull out all the stops. So he purchased the aptly named Hart Island on the St. Lawrence River, New York, as a surprise for his beloved wife Louise. Here he set about constructing one of the largest houses in America at the time, costing a cool $2.5 million. And remember, that's $2.5 million over 100 years ago. Adjusting for inflation, that's near to $100 million in today's money. Yoinks! Want to see it? Boom! Not bad, huh? Except that's just the outhouse. This is the actual castle. Hot damn! Construction began in 1900, but it tragically stopped in 1904 when Louise suddenly died. Devastated and heartbroken, George couldn't bear returning to the island as a lonely widower. So the remains of his audacious mansion were left to rot. For 73 years, no welcome guest stepped foot inside Bolt Castle, and as time went on, it was beat down by tough weather and vandals. However, in 1977, the project was overtaken by a trust who purchased this elaborate home for just $1. They've been fixing it up, and as of 2020, they've spent an eye-watering $50 million on renovations alone. Sadly, all the money in the world could never finish this house the way it was meant to be. Ugh, what a bummer. Poxy Pyramid. Egypt, you've given us some of the world's most incredible architectural marvels. The Sphinx, the pyramids of Giza, but only real ones know of a building that even the pharaohs tried to sweep under the rug. I'm talking about the pyramids of I'm talking about the pyramid of Neferefre. Phew. This is the resting place of Abu Sir of Neferefre Isi, an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who ruled way back in the 25th century BC during the 5th dynasty. Aside from his pyramid, hardly anything is known about Neferefre. And even the pyramid doesn't give us much. See, despite the foundations being 256 feet wide and 213 feet long, it only measures a measly 23 feet tall. According to an inscription from the time, work stopped during Neferefre's second year in charge. Huh? Well, it's generally agreed that he must have died just 2 or 3 years after taking the throne, bringing work to a premature halt. Nonetheless, he was buried in his unfinished pyramid, which was hastily turned into a mastaba, a kind of large flat-top tomb, by his successor. Many years later, small fragments of his mummy were uncovered there, which suggested Neferefre was only in his early 20s when he died. Yikes. Poor guy. Imagine being remembered for thousands of years as the pharaoh with the tiny pyramid. Now that's embarrassing. Phew. Unlike all of these construction catastrophes, I've actually completed my video. Take that, suckers! Which of those unfinished money holes would you most like to see completed? Let me know in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.